y'all, Dixie here. I was finally able to backpack with the Durston X-Mid Pro 2 that I've been trying to take on a trip for like a year now. So today I want to talk to y'all about that. My original plan was to take the X-Mid Pro 2 on my thru hike of the Arizona Trail and use it side by side with the Z-Packs Duplex L. I've been stuck on the Z-Packs Duplex or some variation of it for about 5 years now, but due to a closure on the north rim of the Grand Canyon, I ended up postponing that trip. But I was finally able to take it with me to the Sawtooth Wilderness last month, so I'm going to give you my initial thoughts from this first backpacking trip. This has been a very popular tent, so it was a little tricky to get my hands on it for a while, and they are currently showing on the website that they're sold out. However, I read that there is a new and improved release coming next month, so I assume that they'll be back up for sale within the near future. But the current weight listed for this tent is 19.6 ounces. Not sure if that will change with the new release, but I can't imagine it would drastically from that. And the price listing currently is $679. If this type of backpacking gear is not worth it to you, that makes absolute sense. I do have some budget gear review videos that I will link to in the video description. But if you're interested in learning why this type of product might cost as much as it does, I also have a video on that I will link to in the description. I want to talk to you about the things that I really like about this tent. First, it feels pretty roomy in there, especially for a solo backpacker who lacks a two-person shelter just to have a little more space. I didn't find myself knocking my head on the tent and getting misted on as much as I do in my Z-Packs Duplex. I think because of the way the tent is cut, it just seems to allow for more functional headroom as far as sitting up and doing things in the tent. I like the concept that it only requires 4 tent stakes for setup. However, I can't imagine only using 4 tent stakes with it. I just like having more than that, and plus I tend to leave some behind anyway, so I'm always gonna have extra. It does have additional loops and even guy out points if you're expecting to be in windy or stormy conditions. I also appreciate the way that the design allows for your trekking poles to be offset so that you don't have this trekking pole in the middle of the doorway as you're trying to climb in and out. In addition, I very much appreciate the vestibule design of this tent. It feels like there's more space in the vestibule if you wanted to store gear in there, but also that the vestibule is more of a protected area than it is, at least in comparison to the Z-Packs Duplex that seems to have more of a gap. With the design of this tent, the vestibule seems to hug the ground a little bit better, helping protect from water splashing up if it's raining. Also, the closure of the vestibule itself, zipping up, is something that I like versus the little loop and latch of the Z-Packs Duplex that I'm used to. Again, it just allows more protection and makes things feel a bit more secure. And on that note, there's actually a new zip version of the Z-Packs Duplex, so that's something that I might check out in the future. Because the floor of this tent is made from that sill PEU nylon, it does pack up a bit smaller than other Dyneema 2-person tents that I've used. Also, when you're sleeping on that nylon floor, it doesn't crinkle and make as much noise under the sleeping pad as Dyneema does. It did kind of catch me off guard after a couple of days of being out in the Sawtooth Wilderness. I thought, oh my God, I'm putting nylon on the ground. I'm gonna end up with some sort of abrasion or, punch a hole in the bottom of the tent because I don't have a ground cloth. I'm just so used to, if I have a nylon tent, you gotta have that ground cloth. And it's just something else to fuss with and extra weight, and then something else to purchase because usually they're not included. But Durston's website actually says that this tent can be used without a ground cloth as long as it's being used on normal, typical backpacking surfaces. But if you're gonna be on something rocky or gravelly, then you might want to go with a ground cloth. If I continue to use this tent, I'll probably carry a piece of polycryo just to help protect it. But the sill PEU nylon is actually more abrasion resistant than the Dyneema that I'm used to having on my Z-Packs Duplex. So it's kind of funny that mentally I'm like, oh, I've got to protect it. They do make footprints for this tent specifically if you do want to extend the longevity of the floor of your tent. But I would go with just a sheet of polycryo because it's going to be cheaper and more lightweight. I have slept in this tent now at least 2 nights in the rain. The first time I ever slept in it was just a quick overnighter, like right outside of my house by a lake. But on this trip, I want to say it even rained more than once that night. I know it stormed for sure one night. It performed well in the rain. I didn't have any leaks or anything splashing up. And I think that the design of the tent hugging the ground closely, although it doesn't ventilate as much as my Z-Packs duplex, it does help prevent me from pushing the bathtub floor out past the wall of the tent like I have done in my duplex, and then it ended up flooding. But I would like to test this tent better in strong winds. I did have strong winds in Idaho, but they were more kind of overhead. It wasn't like whipping my tent around. And on that note, something else that is preferable about this tent to my Z-Packs duplex is it's hot bonded. A lot of times tents are either stitched, glued, seam taped, but this one is hot bonded. So it's actually stronger where it's put together than just the individual pieces. And while I can't say I've ever had an issue with my other tents at their seams, I guess it's just a little bit of peace of mind. Now for my graps, the magnetic tiebacks. I think that in theory, this seems like a really cool and simple idea because you don't have to fiddle with putting a little piece through a loop and securing it. You just kind of flip it back and the magnet connects to the magnet. And it works as far as the magnet actually does click together, but any little bumpage I found of the rolled up door and I had it coming undone. And that was just aggravating because I'd rather do something and take a little bit longer one time than to have to keep repeatedly doing something. So that was something I cussed at a few times. I don't know if it needs to be a stronger magnet or more surface area or what. I'm sure that would add more weight, but I would rather that than, again, just having to fuss with it all the time. After recording, I saw that the newer version of the tent does have stronger magnets, so I guess I'm not the only one who had an issue with that, and it does seem like there have been efforts to remedy that. So if any of y'all have used the tent with the stronger magnets, let me know how they worked out for you. I did miss having pockets on the inside of the tent, but I did read that they have actually already updated that design, and the newer version than the X-Mid Pro 2 that I have did end up having dual pockets. Also, I don't care for having to pay attention to where my head's gonna go like as soon as I throw my tent down. I like at the end of a long day just being able to throw my tent down, put it up, and then when I get in there kind of wiggle around and figure out like, okay, which way does my head need to go, you know, where's the uphill? Yes, I understand you try to pick out the flattest piece of ground possible, but it's just not typical that it's actually completely level. And so there's going to be some sort of uphill most of the time. The way that it's cut, it's meant for head spaces to be on opposite ends of the tent. So because of that, if you're wanting to enter one side of your tent or the other, depending on how you're setting up, maybe you're close to a tree, but now you've set up one side close to the tree and the head space on the other side is now downhill. So now you have to decide, okay, do I want to rearrange the way that I have this set up or have the trouble of trying to climb in next to this tree or just sleep with my head downhill. Whereas with the Z-Packs duplex, you just throw it down and your head can be on either end. Next, the stakes. The way that it has been on the website, if you want to pay extra, you can purchase some stakes, but I would honestly just decline that and purchase them separately because I have destroyed multiple of these stakes so far. And I'm not any more rough on them than I have been my MSR mini groundhogs, so that's what I would do. And you're looking at a weight difference there of like 1 to 2 grams. These are listed on the website at 8.5 grams, whereas the mini groundhogs I believe are like 9.92 grams. There was some commentary that I saw from Dan Durston from several months ago addressing the issues with tent stakes, so it does seem like he's aware of this and there might be something coming in the future that's better than what he offers now.
You should have probably revisited this setup.
And finally, probably my biggest frustration while I was out on the trail this last time, was the setup of this tent. I had watched the setup video before when I used the tent, given it had been quite a while, so I probably should have brushed back up on that. But I just found myself getting so aggravated when I was setting it up. And I know that some of that is because I'm so used to the Z-Pax duplex, just stake out the four corners, put in the trekking pole, stake that out, and I'm done. With this one, it just did not seem as straightforward because the rectangle of the floor space that you stake out, you don't necessarily see that when you're looking at it above and you're seeing the doorway, just because the sleeping space inside of the tent is kind of tilted from the footprint that you set up. I don't know if I'm making sense, but if you look at the diagrams, you might see what I'm talking about. But in preparing for this video and seeing what changes had been posted on the website, I did see some comments where Dan Durston said, hey, I've actually put out a new video with instruction on how to set it up maybe a bit more easily. And I did watch that right before I came out here to record and right before I set this tent up. And I will say that it did help. I think over time and having more practice, I could become more proficient at the setup of this tent. But I do stand by that I don't think it's as straightforward as the Z-Pax duplex. Because I was kind of fumbling around with the setup of this tent when I was out in Idaho, I actually punctured the floor of my tent because I did not zip open the vestibule to put my trekking pole in it. I was just kind of sliding it under there, and I didn't realize that when I put it down on the ground, some of the bathtub floor was bunched up, and I actually stuck it through that. Anyway, I still don't feel comfortable with my ability to set it up with just 4 tent stakes, but if you watch the video, he does make it look magical and very simple. All in all, I do think that this is a quality tent. It is constructed well and seems to function pretty well. Again, just some of those minor things that for me were frustrating, but for other people may not be deal breakers at all. I also want to say that I'd like to give it another shot when I don't feel like I might be dying out on the trail. I think some of my getting so frustrated with it when I was trying to set it up out there was because I was not feeling well and there was something wrong going on with my body. Just a mini update on that. I have had my heart monitor removed, so that has been sent off, and I assume the data is being extracted from it. And also I was set to do my stress test / echo today, but it was rescheduled because the treadmill is not back yet. So anyway, I will do a full health update though when I find out what's going on. Thank y'all so much for your support through everything. That is all I have for y'all today. And if any of y'all have tips, tricks, or thoughts on the XMID Pro 2, I would love to hear those in the comments below. Thank y'all for watching, and we will see y'all next time.